Story 1. I would immediately donate $1 million to the local library system. The programs they offer for people of all ages and the services they provide to the community are the best value for your charitable dollar. Story 2. It just happened to us last month in April. My wife and I grew up poor and started our marriage with no money. We did not even have a wedding ceremony or honeymoon. Instead, we saved our money and just signed paperwork. We worked through the years, quit our jobs, and started our own business. We worked hard for 10 years and became successful. My wife has a passion for saving cats and dogs. A series of unfortunate events volunteering at other shelters led us to take drastic measures into our own hands. We decided to establish our own private nonprofit animal shelter with our own funding to do things the right way. Now we own a private safe space to save animals. The locals have come out to support us. We never ask for money. Everything is paid out of our own pockets to cover illness treatment, vaccinations, surgeries, and vet visits. Instead, people have been donating supplies, helping walk the dogs, and interacting with and teaching the animals to be around humans so they can get adopted. We also hired an older woman who was looking for work to help support herself, creating a job position for her. We will eventually get a bigger space, but for now, we have 3,000 square feet of indoor space and are slowly making improvements. It is also our kind of hangout, a getaway from the workplace. My wife and I sometimes sleep there. We placed a table right by the large windows that overlook the city park and city views. Cherry blossoms bloom in the spring and stretch along the road. It is quite the sight. Story 3. I want to buy rundown apartment buildings, rehabilitate them, and use them as halfway houses to help reduce homelessness. This would solve the eyesore that some of these outdated facilities create and help get people off the streets and under a roof until they can determine their next steps. Additionally, a food truck would visit underserved communities a few times a week. Nothing would be for sale. Everyone is welcome to order as much as they want. Money is not accepted. The goal is simply to provide food. Story 4. Buy land for nature. Permanent environnemental conservation. The interesting part, assuming limited resources, is deciding how to prioritize. Environmental sensitivity, that is, protecting the most at-risk and important habitats. Acquisition costs. Maintenance costs, including taxes. Legal regime. Is the property rights regime stable? Can I depend on the government to protect the land from illegal use or at least enforce judgments? Is the government likely to expropriate my land in the future? Investments in people can be discouraging, as many problems feel endless. But with nature, mostly you just need to give it space and get out of its way. Story 5. I would buy a good car, drive around, and look for a damaged vehicle that the owner could not repair. Then I would trade for it, fix up the new car, and continue doing the same. Story 6. When I was younger, my local library received a large donation from a philanthropist and underwent a complete renovation, including new public services. There was now a sewing station where you could borrow a sewing machine, take classes, or even make buttons, which my friends and I often did. There was also a computer lab with three-dimensional printers and many classes. Although I never personally used these services very much, I am sure they helped a lot of other young people. It was really cool to have so many resources become accessible all of a sudden. I would definitely like to make an impact like that. Story 7. My wife and I used to use Reddit to raise funds to buy post-traumatic stress disorder service dogs for veterans. I would like to start doing that again. Story 8. I would start a nonprofit organization that subsidizes or pays for the dues of children who cannot afford to participate in youth sports. For example, the most affordable quality team for children to join in 7 and under baseball here costs $600 per year. I would also establish multiple travel baseball teams affiliated with my nonprofit, targeting specific neighborhoods and impoverished communities. This would include building a complete baseball facility and fields for that community. I would focus specifically on baseball since I have knowledge in that area, with the goal of expanding to other sports, starting with softball and female sports. This initiative would help keep children out of trouble and provide mentorship for more youth. I could elaborate further, but that is my vision. Story 9. I would invest significant amounts of money, hundreds of millions of dollars, in one large public school system with a major emphasis on teacher raises, work expectations, and lowering the student-to-teacher ratio. I want to show all the politicians and loudmouths that you can actually invest money in education and achieve significant, life-altering outcomes for children. Every other industry requires funding to hire and retain talent. Why is education any different? The truth is, it is no different. Teachers are burnt out, tired, and return each year to a more disappointing and challenging environment. Story 10. My local animal shelter always needs financial help, and I would love to ensure it is never a problem for them. Story 11. I want to open a large university-sized campus with trade schools to allow anyone who cannot afford it to attend for free, including room and meals, and learn a trade to establish a better life. This initiative aims to break the cycle of poverty, drug addiction, and broken families. Story 12. I would donate to immediately process all untested sexual assault kits that are stored and forgotten for all victims. I would also donate towards schools in need and help struggling single mothers. Story 13. Warm, clean toilets for everyone, staffed with first responders to help people who accidentally take too much fentanyl. There is so much human waste on the streets in my city. One reason is that there are no adequate bathroom facilities for people experiencing homelessness. I would fix that. And yes, people would use the toilets to inject drugs. I would help those people too. You cannot live in the toilet, though. I would draw the line there. Story 14. Water purification for countries where safe drinking water is difficult to access. The technology exists, but companies with the distribution power to implement it will not do so because it would cause a significant decrease in sales. Story 15. I have always wanted to buy an abandoned hotel and convert it into studios for teenage mothers. There would be an on-site daycare center and library. They would have resources to ensure they have all of their legal documents, the ability to sign up for state services, and the option to continue attending high school regularly or obtain their GED. There would be connections to people in the trades for apprenticeships and assistance with filling out the free application for federal student aid so they could attend a local college. This would provide support and help set them up for a real chance at success. Story 16. I would take every high school freshman in the country to Washington, D.C., so they could experience it firsthand and understand it as more than an abstraction. Then I would buy Fox News and have them play reruns of Sesame Street all day. Story 17. If I had Elon Musk-level money, school lunch at every school in the country would be on me every day, every year, forever. Story 18. There is a video I saw several years ago where a homeless gentleman is picked up, given a total makeover, provided a place to stay, and offered a job. I do not really remember what happened to him, but I would probably do something similar. I am not going to play therapist, but I would try to give many homeless individuals a chance to reclaim their lives. Story 19. I would try to be the real-world person who agreed to pay for college or trade school for any student in an underprivileged neighborhood if they graduated from high school. He did numerous other things as well. Story 20. Donate to as many kill shelters as I can to help them become no-kill shelters. Improve employee wages, add more space, and provide whatever supplies they need for as long as necessary to achieve financial stability. Create my own animal haven on a large farm where I would take animals that no one wants, including elderly animals in their last years of life, and give them the best years they deserve. They would have free range of the fenced acres and spacious, comfortable shelter for sleeping. No more kennels or confinement in small areas. Story 21. Convert a few hotels into housing for the underprivileged and homeless. Additionally, social workers will be available to assist with job placement, and health consultants will address any underlying mental health issues, providing a secure foundation for these individuals. Story 22. Free education, sports, and museums for everyone worldwide forever. Figure skating, yes. Ballet, yes. Aviation engineering, yes. Music, yes. Doctorate in chemistry, yes. Visit the Louvre, yes. Equestrian, yes. Medical school, yes. Everything is infinitely accessible to everyone. Story 23. Buy all the vacant lots and homes in my small town to save them from the hordes of unpleasant people snapping them up. Then I would resell them to locals at a below-market price to ensure our residents do not have to rent homes all their lives. Story 24. Fund nutritious, delicious, and satisfying school meals for every child in kindergarten through grade 12. This would include kits they can take home on the weekend and a snack pantry available for free at any time of day. I worked in education for many years, and one of the biggest issues I saw was hunger. I started keeping a supply in my closet of food that had some nutritional value, like protein and fiber, to actually keep them full for a while. The kids knew they could go in at any time to grab something. Even students I did not teach would come into my room to get food. I cannot tell you how big of a difference it made. I would ideally love to fund the whole public education system from the ground up, but there is too much political red tape getting in the way. Corporations have dug their greedy hands into it and completely ruined everything. I figure if I can start with fresh food that nourishes our youth while also providing jobs, as more people would be needed to cook and manage the kitchens, and fostering a relationship with local farms, that is at least a valiant start at undoing their disastrous work. Story 25. I would address the trash problem on land and in the ocean by developing a method to burn or shrink it and remove it safely. I would also create a way to absorb and filter the toxins. If possible, I would reuse the residue for fuel or building materials. Story 26. Set up a version of an emergency fund for people who cannot afford one. Could be like an insurance policy where you pay $5 per month, but get access to $1,000 once a year if you lose a job or your car needs repairs. Ideally, set it up for New York City to see how it works for a selected group of people. The goal is to reduce payday loans and other debt cycles. Story 27. I would pay off student loan debt. I feel like it is basically slavery to require a degree in order to work and then have that degree cost as much as a mortgage, leaving you in debt for most of your life. You would think we would prioritize education more as a society if we wanted useful people with better intelligence. Story 28. I would start with a nonprofit payday loan company to eliminate the predatory system that currently takes advantage of low-wage workers. Then I would move into other industries that exploit the so-called working poor. Story 29. I would start teaching financial literacy courses. Currently, 90% of financial advisors and financial literacy materials are sales pitches for life insurance policies that offer suboptimal returns. I want to genuinely educate people on personal finance topics and help them change their lives. Story 30. If I were a billionaire, I would establish a system for providing free dental care for people who cannot afford it. Obviously, if you are walking around in fresh Jordans and have a new phone, you can afford it. You just do not care and you would not qualify. Story 31. I would do something with habitat restoration and preservation. Humans keep pushing all sorts of animals out of natural habitats, jeopardizing entire species so we can build more apartment buildings, highways, and so on. It would be rewarding to know you helped preserve unique life forms on the planet. I do not know where I would start, but probably something with marine life because I love fish and amphibians. Story 32. I would help pay to set up a children's Mercy Hospital branch in my rural area. Many families have to travel up to 2 hours for the closest hospital. Story 33. Animal rescue and flooding. Everyone that I come across has coffers full of money. Unlimited access to Chewy, an online delivery company that provides pet supplies. Every veterinary bill paid and all medications covered. Story 34. Huge plot of land with many trees dedicated to old and disabled farm animals across Australia. Old chickens? Bring them here to live their best free-roam life in their golden years. Cows not producing milk anymore? Send them here to enjoy the grass and live their best lives. Horses are old and can no longer work? We will set them up near the cows. Lame goats and sheep? Send them over. We will fit them with three-dimensional printed devices to improve their quality of life and give them a new start. Pigs too big for breeding or have outgrown your residential home. We will take them for mud baths and munchies all day. Story 35. I would start a company that solely provides jobs. All the profits would be returned to employees and used for expansion. Story 36. I want a nonprofit organization that does not do anything specific except help the people in my community. Cannot afford rent this month? Check with other resources in the area. And if those do not work out, come talk to me again. Need a ride to your medical appointment 4 or more hours away? Got you covered. Low income and you have to move out tomorrow, but your new apartment will not be ready for 3 weeks? Let us find you a place to stay. You are out of pet food and supplies and do not get paid until next week? We will get your pet a general checkup, vaccines, spay or neuter, and provide some food and supplies. I see many honest people in my town who are struggling, and we just do not have the resources. If people abuse this assistance, they will be blacklisted until they can prove that they are legitimately trying. Story 37. I would donate money to create a system where anyone can get mental health conditions diagnosed and then receive support with medication and therapy as quickly as possible. I was fortunate to get a private attention deficit hyperactivity disorder diagnosis in the United Kingdom because the National Health Service waiting list was over 2 years long. Medications have changed my life completely, and it breaks my heart to think about all the children who cannot get their lives turned around because they cannot afford it. Story 38. I always wanted to create an indefinite charity. A large lump sum, say $1 billion, invested in a broad market index fund, for example, which has a lifetime annual percentage yield of roughly 10%. Half of the gains go to charity, and half of the gains get reinvested. At historical levels of returns, the first year would have $50 million spent on charity. It would take only 15 years for the charity to have spent an amount equal to the initial investment of $1 billion total, but it continues forever and grows in how much it can donate. Over 100 years, it will have used $130 billion for charity, approximately $14.5 billion adjusting for inflation. At the 100-year mark, it will be donating $6.5 billion a year, equivalent to $342 million in today's dollars. In 200 years, it will be donating the equivalent of $2.3 billion today every year to charity. Story 39. We are talking about extreme wealth with literally no restrictions. Every homeless person I see, I talk to them for a bit and then give them a ride to a house in the area where they want to live. I give them the keys with no questions asked. The house is paid for forever, including property tax, utilities, internet, and electricity, along with enough money for food for 10 years. They can do whatever they want from there, succeed or fail, but this sets every one of them up to rejoin society and get off the streets. Story 40. After consulting with a qualified advisor, I would set up a hardship and holidays trust fund for friends and relatives. I would like it to be administered by external professionals, having taken administrative advice on setting grant criteria and award levels. Additionally, I would like to contribute to other meaningful causes. Some would benefit from one-time grants likely funded by liquidity, and I would seek to help fund others as an ongoing benefactor, possibly funded by investments. Story 41. As a high school teacher in the United States, I would ensure that all schools have extracurricular facilities that are as equal as possible. In fact, I might go so far as to make the smaller, poorer districts have better facilities than the richest. Story 42. Improve school meals and make them free for everyone. Increase staff numbers, upgrade equipment based on recommendations, and enhance food quality with adequate funding. Develop a vocational program focused on cooking high-quality food to ensure students become the best fed in the state, region, and nation. Story 43. I live in Michigan and would establish several scholarships. The first would be for kids from rural northern Michigan, several from the northern Lower Peninsula, and several from the Upper Peninsula. If you know anything about Michigan, you know these areas are sparsely populated, and many people live at or below the poverty line. There are many incredibly smart, great people in these areas who just don't get the boost they deserve. To be clear, there is absolutely nothing wrong with living the life people choose in those areas, but it should be by choice. I would also establish a scholarship for skaters. Traditional team sports should not be the only athletes to have their college expenses covered. Story 44. I'm not diabetic, but I would 100% buy or build an insulin factory and sell insulin at the minimum price needed to keep the factory operational. Insulin should be affordable. The 1,000% price increase over the last 10 years is unjust. I am not using the word unjust lightly. The inventors of insulin sold the patent for $1 because it was too important to humanity to profit from. To exploit people continuously is wrong. To say, well, the price is what the market will bear, is wrong when the cost of not buying the product is your life. $4 a vial to produce, then selling for $300 a vial is wrong. I do not care if I am banned for this, but some pharmaceutical CEOs are responsible for harming people and should be held accountable for crimes against humanity. Story 45. I would buy old closed shopping malls and convert them into mixed-use communities consisting of small low-cost apartments, cafes, doctors' offices, urgent care clinics, and small stores such as groceries. The wide promenades would serve as community spaces, indoor parks, and more. I would also transform the large empty parking lots into community gardens and parks. The possibilities could be endless and help to reclaim a sense of community throughout the area. Story 46. I have always wanted to provide help for transgender children. I would like to see the suicide rate decrease. I would try to set up free counseling along with a safe space for them to gather. I would also consider providing apartments and job placement services for children who are kicked out of their homes. Story 47. When my son died, many people asked if we needed money or a fundraiser. We are not rich, but we are doing okay and felt uncomfortable accepting anything. Instead, we set up a fundraiser for the library, which raised about $25,000. My son loved the library. We would sit together and he would bring me book after book to read. I hope they were able to help other children enjoy reading as much as he did. Story 48. Convert every single workout gym machine into a power grid that harnesses human power. Every city could be powered by energy created by humans simply from working out. Think of all the potential energy that is wasted every day by humans doing work. Sweat equity that is not being used or captured efficiently. Consider all the power that treadmills and stationary bikes alone could provide. Spin classes could power urban energy grids. Belt-driven alternator attachments can generate as much as 100 watts in an hour. As a bonus, add solar panels to all gym rooftops and build covered parking with solar panels. Clean energy powered by humans and nature. Add an energy tax credit for hours logged and offer free gym memberships as incentives. This is how to fix the obesity epidemic and the energy situation at the same time while fostering a community network. Free gyms act as a third space. Story 49. If I were Elon Musk, I would buy American politicians and shape the system to truly represent the people. Then I would support legislation capping income so billionaires could not exist and tax existing billionaires at 80% to pay off the deficit they created. If they say, but then the billionaires will leave, I would tell them to go ahead and leave. They are not as important as they think they are. When they leave, there will be opportunities for others. Story 50. I would love to go to a grocery store and be a secret cashier, paying for people who need it or are just decent humans. Story 51. Children's education would be fully funded from preschool to the highest level of education they can achieve. Meals at school are provided at no cost, and supplies are provided for students. College, master's, and doctoral degrees are free of charge as long as the student can earn the degree. I am not sure if I could donate to teacher districts to improve their pay, but I would do that as well if money were no issue. Story 52. Abused women and children. I would go far in providing a safety net and actual security. It is incredible how easy it is to stay in such a relationship and how dangerous it is to leave it. The frightening part is that most people endure the abuse because they have nowhere else to go for shelter or food, no professional skills, and no resources for decent legal representation. A lot of money also goes into public relations. I am so fed up with individuals like Jordan Peterson minimizing a deadly situation. Signed, an abused woman who stayed far too long. Story 53. Start the Church of Happy, a place for people who need a sense of belonging. Organize community service activities, game nights, social gatherings, and mental health support. This is not religion-based. Story 54. Create affordable housing where everyone who rents pays only a reasonable percentage of their wages. Unemployed individuals receive 1 year free to get started. The solution to homelessness is homes. Story 55. Start a company that buys inexpensive debt and forgives it. Create an animal sanctuary to rival some national parks. Story 56. start my own habitat for humanity, building tiny homes and small family homes for those in need, built by people who have gotten out of jail and need a new start. I would also build larger homes and sell them to help keep the project funded and pay those recently released. I would charge rent to those just out of Story 57. Building healthy communities through mixed socioeconomic bungalow court-style housing is a long-term project aimed at encouraging community development. Starting these projects outside the for-profit model can lead to decisions that foster thriving communities in the long run. I am not committed to any particular style, though I prefer the bungalow. If I were wealthy enough, I would begin experimenting and collecting data over an extended period, allowing that data to guide building design changes over time. The goal is not to provide the cheapest housing for the greatest number of people, but effective housing for many. The objective is also not for all houses to be subsidized. Instead, people from diverse backgrounds would live and share common spaces. Significant effort would be invested in creating initial governing documents to ensure communities remain well-funded and maintained, with residents having a genuine say in management. Story 58. My wife and I talked about founding a charity focused on supporting the small local community. The local Boy Scouts need a trailer for hauling camping gear. A poor church received a new playground for the children. The high school football team obtained good helmets, and anyone who needs the pregame meal but cannot pay is taken care of. Story 59. Free food every Sunday afternoon. Rest of the day, $1 per plate. Hunger should be the last thing a person has to suffer. Everyone is welcome. Story 60. Housing the homeless. If money were not an issue, I would end homelessness. Many structures would need to be built, but it would be worth it. Story 61. I would build a number of apartments. Nothing especially fancy, but with all the necessities. Then I would go downtown and pick up all the homeless people. Each person would receive a key and a ride to the apartments. Over the next several months, I would do what I can to assist these individuals. I imagine they would need a mix of medical and psychiatric help. The long-term goal would be to help these people reach a point where they are capable of taking care of themselves and working within society, but that is a long-term goal, years down the road for many. Then I would speak in front of my city council and loudly say, "Look at that. How complicated was that?" It was not. Story 62. I would like to create a school grant specifically for brown children in conservative homes who want to emancipate themselves and attend college early. Story 63. I've always dreamt of owning businesses with the goal of breaking even and paying employees well above market rate, so people would have a place to work where they are compensated fairly. I feel this would create genuine buy-in from employees and make it a positive place to work and support. I would also love to buy blighted apartment buildings, renovate them, and rent at truly reasonable prices so people can afford them and be proud to live there. I know both ideas are idealistic, but it is a nice dream. Story 64. I would give money to Place of Hope in Columbia, Tennessee. It is the only rehabilitation center I have ever heard of that is completely free and not run by money-grabbing hypocrites. Story 65. I want to create a transgender help center and shelter that provides housing for transgender people who have been kicked out of or had to leave their home or country due to their identity. It would also offer connections to job opportunities, access to gender-affirming care and information, including services from psychologists, voice coaches, endocrinologists, and recommendations for surgeons. The goal is to provide support until individuals can get back on their feet and reduce the detransitioning rate from 8% to less than 1%. I would also like the center to assist minors with unsupportive parents, although I realize this could be legally complex. Ideally, this would be a network existing in every country where it is legally allowed, excluding places where being transgender is illegal. The center could also have a legal team to fight lawsuits and lobbying efforts by transphobic groups, as well as handle personal cases to help those it serves. Additionally, there could be a department specializing in support for detransitioning people, providing compassionate resources that truly listen. This would be a better alternative to extremist or religious anti-trans organizations that exploit detransitioners for political gain and discard them when they are no longer useful. Far too often, people facing problems in their transition, whether due to surgery complications, social backlash, or identity confusion, are led to self-hatred and become detransition activists. Instead of supporting them, these groups turn their struggles into tools for profit. Story 66. Since I make enough to pay my bills and save for retirement, I donate to a couple of art organizations. One promotes literacy in children, and the other is a nonprofit that hosts monthly exhibits of marginalized groups. These are niche causes, but I want to feel like my money is actually making a difference. Story 67. Build a bunch of homes for the homeless. I would also love to buy the empty homes of the seasonal residents in my area. The idea of someone owning a house and not living in it does not make sense to me. Story 68. An epic no-kill animal shelter partnered with a memory care facility. This allows people suffering from the stress and anxiety of memory loss to enjoy the therapeutic benefits of pets. Story 69. I used to have a free farm where people could take whatever they needed. I would like to do that again, but I have not been able to get funding. Story 70. Buy a building and renovate it to provide free showers and laundry services for anyone in need. Story 71. I am a huge animal lover. Nothing makes me more upset than seeing small animals abused, abandoned, or neglected. I would love to purchase a large parcel of property, hire several workers, and build a sanctuary for these gentle souls to receive the care they need and live freely for the rest of their lives. They deserve it. Story 72. Fund dog training programs in all prisons. This would prevent dogs from being euthanized in shelters and prepare them for new homes. It would also give prisoners a positive activity and a sense of purpose. Some prisons have these programs, but if all did, it would be a win for dogs. Story 73. I would go to every animal shelter and hospital and donate enough money so they never have to ask for donations again, like tens of millions each. This way, people who may not be able to afford care for their pets can get care without bankrupting themselves or having to put their pets down or give them up because of financial difficulties. Story 74. A safe place for women who need to get away from violent men. Private and discreet, with facilities that allow women to learn skills, attend school, and do remote work with daycare available. A small production area for creating products such as food, clothing, and art to help generate income. Story 75. Finance local news organizations that are diligent about facts. These news groups, such as small-town newspapers, have been disappearing, and it shows. Local corruption has increasing free rein. Story 76. I would give $50,000 to each county's animal shelter. There are 3,143 counties in the United States of America. That total would be $157,150,000. I volunteer at a shelter that runs on donations only, and $50,000 would mean so much to us. Story 77. I would open an animal sanctuary for abused pets and farm animals to nurse them back to health and find loving homes for them. Of course, we would keep the ones that cannot be rehomed for any reason. If money were not an issue, it would be expanded into many locations in areas where it is most needed. Story 78. First, I would find the location for a new animal shelter for our community, then a building dedicated to the arts. A place with studios for artists, maybe a small gallery to showcase their art. I do not have an artistic bone in my body, but I enjoy admiring others' work and want to encourage them. Story 79. Pay off student lunch debt and prepay student food. Buy items from teacher wish lists. I used to enjoy doing this on Donors Choose. At most, I would create a fund large enough to pay for all food and $500 per teacher each year. Story 80. I am a builder in Florida. I would use my unlimited funds to build communities for homeless individuals, low-income families, and anyone who needs affordable housing. I would design these communities to be centered around community and nature, with natural lighting and clean air ventilation for all the houses and units. There would also be community gardening spaces to help feed those who prefer to grow their own food rather than pay high grocery prices. Story 81. I would give season passes to 100 music school students to the Los Angeles Opera and the Los Angeles Philharmonic, including transportation and refreshments at the garden prior to the concert. I would donate enough money to put my girlfriend's name on one of the seats in the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion, the Opera House in Los Angeles, where we live. My mom's neighbor is a gardener, a very kind and hardworking person. One of his daughters was admitted to medical school in Berkeley. Even with a full scholarship, it costs almost $40,000 per year to keep her there. I would support them with anything they need. They have a very inspiring story. He came to the United States without a single dollar and worked very hard to support his family. One generation later, his daughter graduated high school with the best grades in her school district and earned this opportunity. These are 3 things, but you get the point. Story 82. Fund public school art, music, and after-school programs. Also, subsidize free, healthy, tasty breakfast and lunch for anyone who may need a good meal. Story 83. I grew up under difficult circumstances and have achieved some level of success. The company I started is doing well, and if it continues to do really well, I want to help a girl I grew up with buy a house. Her mother babysat me, and I would regularly watch her get beaten with a stick they had for that purpose. Her parents were cruel, and her mother ended up overdosing on heroin. My parents were struggling financially, but they loved me. She works a dead-end retail job and seems to be a good person based on what I can tell from social media. We have not been close for over 30 years. It has always bothered me how she never had a chance to succeed. I think there is some survivor's guilt in that desire. Story 84. I would like to start a business and do micro-philanthropy focused on my local community. I want to pay for medical situations, school tuition, and other needs to make a visible impact on the families in my community. Story 85. I would buy as much undeveloped property as I could and give it to the Nature Conservancy or any state land trust. Story 86. How much money would it take to go into politics to get money out of politics? I do not think there is enough. Story 87. A domestic violence refuge and holiday park for victims to reestablish family connections. Many victims are isolated and lose their support from family and friends. It also aims to repair relationships with children to help prevent generational trauma and break the cycle of abuse. Story 88. There are a couple of animal rescue organizations I would fully fund because I support what they are doing. Story 89. Okay. Buy a large amount of remote land vetted for the following purpose. Build a nuclear reactor that directs all of its output into an adjacent carbon capture facility. Then build an on-site nuclear waste facility. After that, continue building new reactors in a row, each dedicated solely to carbon capture. There will need to be enough associated infrastructure for construction and sufficient skilled labor to build and operate the facilities, likely requiring a whole town by this point. Continue removing carbon as long as funding or carbon dioxide levels allow. Consider consulting an economist to determine the percentage of power to sell to sustain the operation indefinitely. If global warming is actually addressed, then great. The largest power generation facility ever can then be repurposed for other goals. Story 90. I would create an animal sanctuary and ensure they are properly cared for and loved as they deserve. I would also invest as much as possible in lobbying against animal farming, without the need to fabricate statistics or deceive anyone. The reality is quite clear. Story 91. I would start a company that takes wool from sheep and turns it into thread for homeless people to sew into cloth. Then they would make shirts and pants to sell. Story 92. Access to food. Eliminate food deserts. Develop community gardens. Provide accessible nutrition education tailored to socioeconomic status with feasible application of knowledge. Support food and grocery cooperatives. Ensure all children receive 2 solid meals at school daily, with programs for dinner and weekend meals. Story 93. Do a state-of-the-art pet hospital, clinic, and hotel. Need to get your pet healthy? Come to us. Going on vacation and cannot take Rex with you? We have you covered. Story 94. Donate to Planned Parenthood and buy all the anti-abortion billboards I can to replace them with pro-choice messages. I am tired of every billboard in my state being dominated by extremist, anti-woman messaging. Story 95. I would buy beach houses and renovate them to make them accessible and medically safe for families of sick children. This would include access to the beach and ocean using elevators or escalators for large sand-wheeled wheelchairs. I would then give away stays to these families. Everyone deserves to feel the ocean at their feet and all that comes with staring out at it. However, I would need to employ someone to select the families because I could not do it myself. Story 96. I remember watching The West Wing, where a wealthy man who feels guilty about hoarding all his wealth asks Claudia Jean Craig, what is the one thing she would recommend he tackle? She responds, roads. It is not glamorous, but it is necessary. We cannot get supplies and food to people where there is no infrastructure to support it. I do not know how true that is, but it made me think about important tasks that are neglected because they are thankless. I would want to do something similar. Food scarcity on this planet is severe. People need to eat to grow emotionally, mentally, and physically. People also need medicine. My personal passion is animals. I would do almost anything to protect endangered species from poachers. Story 97. Buy rental properties and set rent based on breaking even plus enough to cover future maintenance. Enough of this market rate nonsense. Story 98. When my wife was diagnosed with breast cancer, the oncologist said she could use a deoxyribonucleic acid test to determine which treatment would be most effective. The doctor emphasized how important the test is, and it is not covered by insurance. I asked, how much? I almost burst out laughing when she said $200. I am working with the hospital to set up a grant for any woman who needs this test and cannot afford it. We will pay for it. God blessed us with the resources to do this, and I cannot think of a better use for them. He has also blessed my wife with great results in her treatment, so I owe him greatly. Story 99. I want to have a large property with multiple small starter homes for young adults aging out of foster care. These homes would provide a safe environment where they can receive trade school training, other education, and life skills. The goal is for them to know they are valued and can live fulfilling lives, regardless of their beginnings. Story 100. I would rehabilitate some large abandoned buildings and begin a proper orphanage where even children who were not adopted could stay until they could support themselves. We would provide every type of enrichment available, including fully stocked classrooms and kitchens that cooked healthy meals and taught cooking classes. Everything to help improve those children's lives. There would also be security because there are dangerous people out there. Nurses, pediatricians, and doctors would be on site. I want all children to know that the entire world is not bad, that they are our future, and that they can build something so spectacular it will be written about in history books. Story 101. Run a home for unwanted dogs. I would hire people down on their luck who love dogs. I would have a doggy daycare for free and operate 3 shifts, as I know some people work nights. I would find older people who wanted a dog but couldn't afford one, match them with an older dog, and cover their expenses. I would have a food bank for dogs and people because many people give their dog the last food in the house and go hungry. I would have a block of flats and charge below market rate for people with multiple dogs, as many places will not rent to them. I like dogs. Story 102. I would form a political action committee that lobbies to overturn Citizens United and remove money from politics. It would fully fund candidates who do not accept money from other political action committees, do not take bribes, move all investments into a blind trust while in office, and vote in favor of removing money from politics. It may have 3 separate funds. One for Republicans, one for Democrats, and one for independents or third parties. This would allow contributors to direct their support to the party they wish to fund, even those with partisan preferences who agree on this issue. Once a constitutional amendment is passed, the funds will remain in an investment fund for a period to be used if needed to fight any repeal attempts. After the matter is fully settled, the remaining funds will be donated to charities or to the government to help reduce the national debt. I am considering waiting until all politicians who were in office before the rule went into effect have retired. This would prevent anyone who entered politics for financial gain from using incumbent advantage to remain in office and reverse the changes. This may be more cautious than necessary, but a period of about 20 years would likely be sufficient to ensure the issue is resolved. Story 103. I would work with local public services such as food pantries and libraries to help update their facilities and processes, ensuring they have the resources to support the community. Story 104. I have always wanted to establish a scholarship for the high school student who graduates in the middle of the class ranking. Story 105. A closed community for people in need, including nursing homes, abuse shelters, and orphanages, where everyone can interact and support each other. Story 106. I would fully fund the development of more mental health and addiction medicine resources, specifically group homes and treatment centers. There are not enough, and demand is much higher than supply. Story 107. End homelessness and hunger. With hunger eliminated, all the other dominoes of healing can begin to fall. Story 108. This is not going to be a popular opinion, but I would like to help bring back entertainment that has been suppressed because it is considered not economically viable. I do not think people realize the effect this has had on the human psyche due to how generic and uniform music, television, and movies have become. Additionally, many people have no way of expressing their passions or experiencing the joy of seeing and hearing their dreams realized. Story 109. I always want a community hub where they have youth and older adult activities both individually and combined. I would also like to have a few counselors for therapy, including addiction and general mental health, free for the local community. Story 110. I would give people a basic income, enough to cover modest housing and bills, so that no one would have to be a wage slave at an unpleasant job all their lives. Is your boss a bully? Give your notice. Unsafe working conditions? Give notice. Story 111. Pay off college student loans for graduates and provide ample college scholarships. Education should be free or affordable. Graduates should not fall into massive debt to improve themselves. The government should collect more taxes from these graduates because they will obtain better-paying jobs. Story 112. Buy and renovate rundown places so unhoused people can live there. Donate to animal shelters so they are no longer kill shelters. Purchase lots of land for senior dogs. Donate generously to St. Jude Children's Research Hospital to help end childhood cancer. Story 113. I would go around the country and establish care homes for the elderly that are designed like small enclosed towns with skilled care workers dressed as grocers, florists, or barbers. Everyone would have their own home and could wander, shop, and socialize in a safe and monitored environment to promote better quality of life, particularly for those with dementia. I would set high standards for caregivers, including nurses, aides, cleaning staff, cooks, and maintenance workers, who genuinely want to support these people. I would uphold these standards with a livable wage, adequate support staff, realistic ratios, and an emphasis on a real work-life balance. Finally, I would make it affordable or free. The goal would be to support the community, both those needing family care and those living there. With the right management, there is no reason it should cost $6,000 to $10,000 to house and care for these individuals if the focus is on care and quality of life rather than generating profit for a company. Where possible, I would create apartments for older but more able individuals to live with college students. Rent would be free, and students would commit a certain number of hours per week to spend time with their roommates or other residents. The benefits of community living and involvement are exponential for everyone involved. These are versions of programs that have worked on a small scale elsewhere. It would be amazing. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.